It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Sproles, ends up. Yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen as we're here on a Tuesday.
Another short Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it's another short show. Yesterday we were only on for about a half an hour. Today it will be much of the same. We will only be on until about 4:27. As the Utah Mammoth, they're still on an East Coast road swing. So since 106.9 The Fan is the radio home of the Utah Mammoth up here in Cache Valley, we'll be carrying that game. It'll boot us off the air. But much like we did yesterday, we're going to have still as much content as we can pull off aside from what will be on the live show, because we're going to focus on Utah State football here in this live portion. Utah State adding some transfers. We'll talk a little about those additions, along with just kind of looking again at the position groups and kind of where they're standing right now. The additions, are the position groups stronger? I kind of went over my thoughts on this late last week. We want to get Eric's thoughts as well. Just continuing to update as we go along the situation with Utah State's football roster as they're getting closer and closer. At least I think they're getting closer and closer to being done with the transfer portal. But that'll take up pretty much our entire live portion here. But then we'll get into afterward. We'll have this on our podcast feeds. Those of you listening on the podcast feed, nothing will really change for you. But we'll talk a little bit about conference. I don't know if it's conference realignment, but it's.
Oh, that's what this show is all about. Conference realignment and expansion.
Yeah, so we'll talk about. There is some realignment because there's rumors about the Mountain West and some teams that may or may not be getting invites or having talks with the Mountain West in particular. There's nothing involving the Pac-12, but there's also some big meetings happening with the Pac-12 this week. John Wilner reporting on a lot of this, so we'll get into those details. We'll also go over some of the Utah State men's basketball, or not Utah State, Mountain West men's basketball, as there are games tonight. And we'll go over some stuff involving that and some fun numbers that popped up.
Fun with numbers. Yeah, some good juicy stuff that'll be exclusive to the podcast. So just one more reason why subscribe, download, listen. If you missed it in the live portion of it, that's okay. You can go back and listen to all of it, plus the bonus stuff that'll be on there. We have bonus stuff on there yesterday because we were on the air live for just a portion of our time before the Utah Mammoth kicked us off. And so we added more details about the Mountain West, net rankings and standings and all that stuff. And today will be very similar. There'll be a lot of extra stuff that we'll share on the pod. But because we have a limited time on air, for those who can't or won't listen to us on their podcast feeds, some new additions to the Utah State football roster. Transfer portal closed on the 16th, but the Aggies continue to add players to the roster, continue to fill needs. And there were a couple of positions that, as this has gone on, we've looked at. These are some good things, but there's still a few positions that need to be addressed. It appears some of those positions have now been addressed.
Yeah, so since the last kind of update we went over on air, the additions that I have put on my transfer track, although I think we talked about one or two of these players. Eli Wood is wide receiver. I think we talked about him already, but he's a wide receiver coming from Virginia. Rave reviews about his performance, even as kind of a reserve or third or fourth receiver. Caught 16 passes for 205 yards and a couple of touchdowns. A lot of that production actually coming in the conference championship game and bowl game for Virginia. I think 7 of his catches coming in a 2-week span.
Yeah.
And about 100 yards, and I think one or both of those touchdowns. So you can kind of see what he can do in a decent role where he was able to be a solid number 2 receiver at a borderline playoff team with Virginia. I believe I also talked about Asher Cunningham coming from Elon, or at least I think I did, on Friday. I think that's when it was announced he was coming. He's coming from Elon, same place that Dylan Tucker came from, who played 599 snaps for the Aggies at corner last year. So Cunningham coming there. He had 84 tackles last year for Elon, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. He's 6'2", 236-pound linebacker. Likely one of the guys coming in to, along with Harrison Taggart, essentially trying to find a replacement for John Miller, where Miller was a great linebacker in terms of causing chaos. Like Miller led the team in sacks, was up there in the entire conference in sacks and tackles for loss, despite that not necessarily being the typical impact for an inside linebacker. They tend to get tackles for loss and sacks, but usually their whole thing is stop, good linebackers are going to stop guys for short gains because it's not necessarily their job to get into the backfield all the time. That tends to be your outside linebackers, edge rushers, defensive tackles. Like that's kind of their job, is to hold and push back to the line of scrimmage, and it's the linebacker's job to move up toward the line of scrimmage. But with Utah State in their system, they tend to get their linebackers more involved because of how much they blitz. And so I think that's where Cunningham could fit in pretty well, is he's someone who did a little bit more of that with Elon, and now I think he's going to come into a system where that's only going to grow, where he could put up similar numbers for the Aggies because of how much they tend to blitz their inside linebackers, where they use them a bit differently from a lot of typical defenses. Yeah,
it's this transfer class, if we can call it that, is very heavy on defensive, an aggressive defensive approach on the defensive front, defensive line, edge rushers, particularly linebackers, outside linebackers, particularly. And I'm really excited to see how this translates. It looks nice on paper right now, but like to see how this translates to on the field. But there are a good number of these players coming in that have a good number of snaps played. Some of them are a little bit lower level. And so, yes, there's going to be a learning curve. Physicality will be a little bit different. But there's a good number of guys who have had opportunities to be trained at a Power 4 level or have fairly significant playing time that will have opportunities to flourish and grow while here at Utah State. So I'm getting more and more excited about the 2026 football team for Utah State.
And one thing, you mentioned the number of snaps played. That's something where, I feel like there are a lot more snaps played by the guys the Aggies are adding than they did last year. Because that was part of why there was such an unknown over a lot of these guys last year. It's like, wherever they were, they hadn't played.
Right.
A lot of them were junior college last couple of years, where it's really hard to get a beat on those guys. And that's a big jump for a lot of those guys to make, unless you're like a top JUCO product. It's a difficult jump to make, and very often the JUCO guys didn't make a difference. So instead of junior college guys who have been struggling to make that jump to Utah State, they're going after FCS. There's a Division II player, so and those guys have a lot of experience at that Division II or FCS level. Then they're bringing in group of 6 players who had a lot of snaps at where they were. Tuitama, the defensive tackle, 500 snaps. Marquis Grant over at Wyoming, 316 snaps. Javon Robinson over at Georgia State, 616 snaps. They're getting guys who have a lot of snaps there. But even the Power 4 guys that they're adding have a decent number of snaps. A lot of them are typically going to be they haven't played. James Jeanette, Virginia Tech, 61 snaps. Grady Brosterhouse, basically 0 snaps last year. And even then, only a handful of snaps in times where he was playing. He has 1 career pass attempt. Sessi Vaila, he has 121 snaps, which is kind of more than nothing. And so he's kind of one of those that at least has played some. Harrison Taggart, he's started games for power conference teams. Chapman Lewis, I know last year he only played 6 snaps, but the year before he started 11 games for Texas Tech. And only missed games due to injury. So they're getting players who have experience playing at the power conference level, not just guys who are cast-offs.
Yeah, some of the other additions, one of the things that we've been keeping an eye on is they're it's almost like they're overproducing for certain positions like linebacker and defensive tackle, but it's clear they feel they have a need there. They want to create competition to elevate what's being asked of that position. So I get that. But to this point, like through the weekend, we still hadn't seen any tight ends coming in. And I'm not entirely sure we still have a tight end, even though one guy says he was and has some experience there. But it looks like over the weekend, Utah State did get its tight end, but the lines are maybe a little bit blurred as to what his true position really is.
Yeah, Colin Romanowski, I believe is how you say his name. He's a Division II addition. Coming from Ashland College or Ashland University, and
6'1",
yeah,
257 pounds.
Yeah. This is a guy who is bulkier than most tight ends, who tend to come anywhere between 240 and 260. So I guess he's on the high end for bulk if he's a tight end. But he was a fullback at Ashland. That's what he was. He ran the ball 11 times for 43 yards, had a touchdown, did have one catch for it was a 19-yard touchdown. That was his one catch the entire year. But he played fullback. Like, there are some highlights that, Colin himself actually posted. Some of these guys post their own highlight reels, and it's him lining up at fullback. It's him lining up at kind of a tight end, but it's like that kind of wing tight end, wing fullback type role that you actually see Utah State lining up with that, where they'll put their tight ends in kind of those wing spots. Not necessarily the traditional tight end on the line of scrimmage spot, but he's serving as a lead blocker. Sometimes he rushes it, roughly once per game on average. He was rushing the ball, but a lot of lead blocking. Like, that was his thing. Block, occasionally get the ball in short yardage, and I guess he went out for a pass a few times, and one time he caught it. It was actually when the quarterback was like scrambling around, and he's just like, "Oh, Colin, you're open here," and it ended up being a touchdown. So he's not a tight end. They may put him in tight end situations. This may be kind of a positional change, but it's pretty clear Colin Romanowski is going to come in to be part of the run game as far as lead blocking, probably short yardage situations. Utah State could have an interesting short yardage where, like, last year, they were frankly bad at running the ball in short yardage situations. The numbers having the Aggies on like the bottom 10 or 15.
Yeah, Utah State did not have a power game in the playbook. Yeah,
and it showed in a lot of, like, the Boise State game where they were going for it on fourth down in short yardage situations. Bryson Barnes is good in a lot of situations, but in short yardage, he wasn't really that good, partly because he was small. Feisty, tough as tungsten, but like that pounds matter.
Size and power.
Yeah, and he didn't necessarily have that, but the Aggies have added a 210-pound running back in Vailahi and a 260-pound fullback. And they also have a 220-pound quarterback that they've added. They might be hinting at they need guys who can get short yardage. And so exactly how they use Romanowski is going to be interesting, whether he's a true fullback or whether he's a tight end who basically just kind of plays both positions, because we've seen Brock Lane and Josh Sturzer used as both tight end and fullback. And this just may be the Aggies leaning a little bit more into that, or just this being a guy that they like his talents, even if he's unorthodox in terms of his proportions for a tight end. But go out there and get the guy who can make the plays. Doesn't matter if he doesn't have to be 6'5" to be an effective tight end. If he can go out there and do the things tight ends need to do, put him out there. And if 90% of what he does is block and do things in short yardage, there's a value in that, even if he's not a matchup problem, as tight ends can often be in the passing game.
Yeah, tight end is one of the most versatile, but also one of the most complicated positions in an offense, because they can be used in the blocking scheme for running game. They can be used as pass catchers. They're used as decoys. They're used sometimes as lead blockers in the running game. So it's a really interesting and technical position. So interesting to see the move that Utah State is the moves the Aggies are doing to fill the available spots that they have there. Now, we're not done, but we're getting pretty close there. When you look at the numbers, players out the graduation, freshmen that were announced in December, but then players out to transfer. Now, after some of these the ones that were added over the weekend, and in fact, a few more today, more kickers. It looks like Utah State may have added a kicker and a punter. What are the numbers telling you, Jason, like where we're at for Utah State's roster on how many more spots are even available for the Aggies to fill?
I haven't done the math on like how many rosters. I've been meaning to go to my like spreadsheet and create a 2026 roster. All I have right now is the number of transfers in, transfers out. The number of transfers in has now exceeded the number of transfers out, at least the transfers out that I know of. There were 25 players that I've been able to confirm one way or another have left Utah State via the transfer portal. I don't have the math on actually how many graduated, but they've added 26 transfers now. I have 23 on my transfer tracker, and there were 3 more that have been added that I haven't had the time to add to the tracker yet. Yeah, so they added Kenny Odrin, or Odrin Kenny?
Odrin Kenny.
Okay, I wasn't sure which was his first name. So he's a punter. Then they added Tyler Mazdia. Is that how you say it? Masdea. Mazdia?
Sure.
And then was that? Oh no, he's a defensive tackle, I believe, actually.
And then Tyler Halley.
Yeah, Tyler Halley.
He's a kicker coming to Utah State from Grossmont College.
Yeah, so Shippensburg University defensive tackle Tyler Mazdia, and then as you mentioned, the place kicker Tyler Haley. A little easier last name to say there for Tyler. So the Aggies have added a couple of place kickers now. I think 1 or 2 punters. Landon Rico, I believe, is still on the roster as far as I'm aware. And so they've added a couple of kickers. So they've gotten some special teams guys. I think they've also added a long snapper somewhere along the way. So they've added guys to take care of their special teams unit.
Well, and I think that something that probably need to clarify, this Audren Kenny, I don't know that he's a transfer. I think he may be a high school signee, a high school commit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's looking more into his profile. Well, he spent time at JUCO. I don't know.
We'll get
he was a JUCO guy, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
I'll get this figured out. I'll add the requisite players to the transfer tracker when the time comes. But yeah, still, and I didn't have enough time to research these guys. I was tied up in a couple of other things today. Analysis on Utah State's quarterback battle, which there'll be a lot more details about that coming up later this week. There's also some news upcoming for Utah State, some announcements that they're going to be making in the future. Things need to be covered there. We'll have details tomorrow. But yeah, the overall, I guess the one question that I wanted to ask you, Eric, because I've kind of given my opinion on this, and that is that the question being, do you think that this year's Utah State roster is looking like it'll be more talented, so to speak, this nebulous measurement that we don't really have an explanation for? Is it more talented than last year, or at least the potential to kind of see more talent from this year's team than last year?
I think defensively, I can answer that with a yes. Offensively, I don't know. Jury's still out.
Yeah,
I feel like there have been some good upgrades on the defensive side of the ball for Utah State. I mean, Utah State had some strengths on its defense, but I think some of that strength is gone now because of what changed at the secondary. So there are some concerns there for me to some degree, but I like what's happened at the linebacker and defensive front. So I think there have been upgrades there. Offensively, offensive line looks like it's going to be okay. More experience, a few other guys coming in to help out. But what's the quarterback situation really going to be like? What's the wide receiver position really going to be like? Tight ends. I think generally it'll be okay. And I think that's, at least I feel a little bit more comfortable about where this team is at and where this coaching staff is at. Moving into the spring of the 2026. Last year, there were just so many unknowns, and those were never really answered until they kicked it off against UTEP. And that was an awful feeling to try to understand what Utah State football would be like. And yeah, there were stretches where it was rough, and we just weren't sure. And then at the end of the season, it's like, where was this team? If this team was playing like this all season long, they could have been in the conference championship game. Yeah. So they have that potential. It's just how quickly can they move that timeline up? Because last year, we didn't see that until November. Can we see that in late August?
Yeah, and I think that'll be a challenge again because there's still a lot of new players. Like last year, I think a big reason why they couldn't pull off anything early is because they didn't know who they were like among themselves.
Yeah.
Like they were practicing, they saw each other, but they still didn't know who they were until like September, October, or mid-October and into November.
What you do on a practice field is one thing. What happens to you and your brothers on the field of play is totally different.
Yeah. But I think with the coaching staff having a little more familiarity now with the area, with the recruits, having spent a year, like there is at least some continuity between coaching staff and the team. So like you have something there, whereas last year it was literally nothing. So this year you have some continuity, even though there are still a lot of players leaving. There's still a lot of graduations and transfer portal attrition. But you have some players returning that know the system, know the defensive system at least, that have familiarity with the head coach, all the offensive positional coaches, new offensive coordinator, but still a lot of the offensive position coaches are going to remain the same. And so that's going to give Utah State a better starting point than it did last year. And then you add on to that the fact that I do think that they have added more talent. I think you said it well, where a lot of that is on defense, where you look at defensive tackle. Now that they've added another defensive tackle in the transfer portal, so since my analysis late last week, they've added even more, where I thought they were as good, at least as good at defensive tackle, and now adding even more talent, potentially even better. At linebacker, you do lose John Miller, but they've added a couple of players that I think can be as good, at least in the aggregate, maybe even as good as John Miller. We'll see. But you also have Bronson Olival coming back, so you have a returning experience. You look at the outside linebacker edge position. I think they've definitely gotten better there, where they did lose Will Holmes, but Will Holmes wasn't like this major impact player. His biggest value was that he could stay and get better. If you just add guys that are as good or better than Will Holmes, then you've basically accomplished replacing him.
Yeah.
And they've not only added one player, they've added like 5.
Yeah, they've added a bunch.
And they've added
a lot more depth.
Yeah, they've added guys who are impact guys who have experience, guys who have talent, who have size, explosiveness. So they've added some really good pieces there at the edge. So in the front 7, they're better. The secondary, jury's kind of out because did they replace Noah Avenger? No, really.
Probably not.
They found some suitable players, but if they missed on any of them, then they're in trouble in terms of depth.
Yeah.
At safety, I think they've pretty much got it. Losing Ike Larson, I don't know if anybody is as talented as Ike Larson, but I think there are guys who can be impactful, and Ike Larson kind of struggled with his impact anyway. As talented as he was, he struggled at times with his impact. Although he was better once he kind of got into a groove this season. But still, you got Brevin Hamlin back. You've added a couple of really solid transfers. Chapin Lewis, really solid. You've got some returners, aside from losing, Ike Larson, that you're going to have coming back. So I think they're better at the safety position overall. So on defense, 3 of your 4 position groups, or I guess 4 of your 5, depending on how you're counting it. Defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, and safety, you're as good, if not notably better. And at corner, we'll see. There's some work to be done, but they've still done a good job addressing it.
Yeah, and on offense, I mean, you don't have a returner like Bryson Barnes. You don't. So McKay Hillstead, how did you pronounce his last name now?
Brosterhouse. I was watching film, and one of the announcers pronounced it Brosterhouse. So I'm going with that now.
Yeah, so we have those 2 guys. It's likely going to come between them. And then you do have some really interesting, intriguing freshmen, and they may still be in the mix. I mean, one of those freshmen may surprise us and end up as the starter. But so there's more question there at the quarterback position. Last year we didn't know what Brady Boyd would look like. We didn't know what Braden Pagan would look like. So we had a lot of questions there. They turned out to surprise us. And we may have a very similar situation playing out again this year at the wide receiver position. But we do know what Anthony Garcia brings to the table and some of the other guys that are up and coming. So I'm excited about the wide receiver position, but it still has some questions.
Yeah, there's some questions, there's some unknowns, and I like how you said, because I kind of worded it that way last year, where it's like Utah State is in the same position wide receiver-wise right now as they were last year.
Yeah.
It's just last year it worked out spectacularly. This year, if you trust the wide receiver scouting department at Utah State, they should be fine. They'll get guys who are serviceable enough to replace what Braden Pagan and Brady Boy did. Will they be as productive and as spectacular as they were at times? Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out. And there's also a lot of questions at quarterback, as you outlined. That's going to do it for our live portion of the show. We're going to hand it over to the Utah Mammoth. They'll be, you'll hear the call for Utah against the Florida Panthers, but we will keep it here on the podcast and have more content about basketball and some other stuff, including the Pac-12 and Mountain West. Welcome back. For those of you listening on the podcast feed, it's probably been all of 2 seconds. Those of you who listen to the live portion are coming back later.
You were very patient.
Yeah, very patient in waiting for us to come back as we handed the live portion off to the Utah Mammoth. Radio Network is there, going to be broadcasting the Utah Mammoth against the Florida Panthers. Mammoth had their winning streak broken, or at least point streaks. I think there was an overtime loss kind of mixed into there, but they'd gotten points in like 7 or 8 straight games. I forget the exact number. They lost 2-0 to the Lightning. It had to come to an end at some point, but still the Mammoth making strides this year.
Great run. Tampa is a great program. It's a tough place to play. They've got a lot of history on their side. Great talent. But Utah Mammoth, trying to learn what it means to not only win at home, but also win on the road with a pretty young roster and some guys who don't have a lot of playoff experience. They do have some. I mean, for one, it was a homecoming for him, but fun to see them try to make those changes. We'll see how they do tonight against another even better team in the NHL.
Reigning Stanley Cup
Panthers.
champions and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, because Mammoth, they just came off a 7-game homestand where most of that winning run had come. I think it stretched a little bit into a previous road stretch, but now they're like 5 in a row on the road. But then like another 7 in a row at home. They don't play home then away. They play like 5 away and then 7 at home and then 12 at home and then 36 away and like all this crazy stuff. Like
it's a weird schedule.
Yeah, they just go home.
And when they have their next homestand after they get back from this southeast road trip, it's the Winter Olympics wedged in there. So they have a nice big break at home, which is perfect for this Utah Mammoth team.
Yeah, it should be really nice. So, but let's jump into our roots, our true roots as a radio show. I don't know if I can pull up the bit in time. I don't know if I can find it. Where even is that? The Conference Realignment and Expansion show.
Ah, yes. That's what we're really known for.
I can't find the audio embed. It's somewhere around here. I'm supposed to find the B-bar, and it's lost among a bunch of different things here. But just remember that we are the Conference Realignment and Expansion show, the CRES.
Yes, the CRES.
So, a couple of different things, some notes involving the Pac-12, but also the Mountain West and North Dakota State maybe trying to campaign to get into the Mountain West.
Yeah, so let's start there. So their athletic director appeared on a podcast last week, and Chris Murray with Nevada Sportsnet, he picked up on it, and he ran with it, using some of the details.
Yeah, it was Dom Izzo of the Hot Mic podcast, to give the proper credit there.
Yeah, so David Cook is the president of North Dakota State. Matt Larson is the athletic director, and he was the one who appeared on this podcast. And I'll just read the quote of what he said. I would say in terms of our position, I think both myself and President Cook, we want to play at the highest level. And right now, the highest level is FBS football. So I think the things that we've done over the course of the last decade have positioned us to be able to do that. And if there's an opportunity, I think it's something we would absolutely explore. If there's not an opportunity, we're poised to continue competing at FCS at a really, really high level and compete for championships. So I would say in terms of our position, it hasn't changed at all. And our interest of at least exploring that is as strong as it's ever been. Close quote. So North Dakota State looks like, hey, we're eager to make the move, but here are part of a few things that are kind of in their way. One, it now costs $5 million by an institution to move up from FCS to FBS. So many schools were moving up that they implemented a higher entry fee, if you will. The second thing is part of the reason they're not already in the Mountain West, they haven't received an invitation. You kind of have to receive an invitation before you can go somewhere. I mean, they could move up and be just an independent, but who wants to do that? It's really not easy to do.
I'll be honest, though. I don't think they can move up as independent because that's what Sacramento State tried to do, and they were told no.
That's true. You're very right because they tried to ask for that, and they basically told them without an invitation, we're not going to let this happen.
Yeah.
So North Dakota State's sitting there like, well, we'd like to move up, but we're waiting for the invite.
Sacramento State and North Dakota State can form their own conference.
Maybe a conference of two. Pac-12's tried it for a few years.
Yeah, but
it's not long sustaining. But so the question here is, does the Mountain West, do they start to, as this maybe starts to pick up some traction as more people are talking about this, does the Mountain West invite North Dakota State to move up and join them? And if North Dakota State makes that move, would others in their same position soon follow? I'm looking at you, Montana and Montana State. So would other schools in that area, would they also make the move up to the FBS level? And is the Mountain West the right place for them to be? Should the Pac-12 be looking at some of these schools because they could use more football playing members, let's be honest. Because we'll get into this in a little bit. Football scheduling, it's a problem with the number of schools that they have. They need more. And because they don't, it creates some weird things about how to fill your schedule. So North Dakota State moving up, do they go to the Mountain West? Or should the Pac-12 be looking at them?
So here's kind of the issue they end up with. When you look at North Dakota State, they don't come alone. They will not come just by themselves. Would they maybe want to some degree? Maybe. But one, travel-wise, that's a tough ask for all sports. Northern Illinois is making it work in one sport, but that's kind of tough for them. You talk about the $5 million. I think North Dakota State, like a lot of those Dakotas and Montanas and all that, their budgets their entire athletic budgets range from like 28 to 35 million, like at most. So a $5 million fee to move up is like 15% of their budget, like at minimum.
At minimum,
yeah. That's a tough ask for them to make just to move up to FBS, where there's a lot of uncertainty, where they have a pretty solid niche where they're at right now. But
big fish in little pond, or little fish in much bigger pond.
Yeah, and like I think their fans absolutely love it, and it is in its own way, a slice of paradise. The top end of FCS football. It is a glorious thing. It's a small thing, but it is a glorious thing. And personally, I find myself more entertained by watching the FCS playoffs and sometimes bowl games between power conference teams. Because you see the passion in the FCS playoffs and how excited they get. It might be on a little dinky broadcast, but it's true passion as opposed to the two power conference teams whose players don't even want to be there.
Well, the athletic director from Wyoming, Tom Berman, apparently he has gone public saying that he would love to have North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana, and Montana State join. And it makes sense why he would say that.
Yeah,
regionally, it makes a lot of sense to them.
Yeah, he's almost closer to those schools than he is to the San Jose's and Nevadas of the world.
Absolutely. Not just regionally, but also financially.
Yeah. A lot of those schools are closer to Wyoming financially, where they're kind of getting lost in the fray too. But I'll tell you this is what I think this is a potentially likely scenario. And that is that I don't think there's going to be any North Dakota State or Montana State or any of these top FCS schools consider moving to the Mountain West in the very near future. Very near being, I should say immediate future. That being like the next 1 to 2 years. But give it until the early 2030s, that's when the next shakeup is supposed to happen. That's when some grant of rights runs out, like the Mountain West zone grant of rights that's tying teams like UNLV and New Mexico and, everyone in the Mountain West together for the next few years. So give it a few years for that to, simmer. You're going to have the Pac-12 making some strides. Things are going to be a bit, lean for the Pac-12 in terms of all the money they were promising. They may not be getting all of that money in the media deal and whatnot, but they're going to see some growth. You're going to have a couple years where the Pac-12 probably dominates in men's basketball among the mid-majors. You might see them elevate in football. You might see Boise State and San Diego State and Utah State and Fresno like in the conversation for the college football playoff. Probably more than anybody in the Mountain West. The Mountain West is probably going to struggle because their strength of schedule is going to be crap. It'll basically be the Pac-12 and the American competing for that college football playoff spot.
Which, by the way, did you see this? That it's just been uncovered now that the clause changed on which group of 6 team goes to the college football playoff.
Wait, what's the clause in the group of 6?
So it was that they met together and they said, okay, we're going to keep it at 12 teams that go to the playoff. And it was always the highest rated conference champion out of the group of 6 is a participant in the college football playoff. Well, that's changed now where it just says the highest ranked team out of the group of 6.
Oh, really?
You do not have to be a conference champion.
That's interesting.
So if you happen to be a best rated team, highest ranked team, you go to your conference championship and you get upset, but you're still the highest ranked team out of any others involved, you still get to go. You still get to be involved in the college football playoff.
Part of me doesn't like that. Part of me thinks it's good. And another part of me thinks that's not really going to functionally change a whole lot. But as much as I say what I expect to happen functionally, we've seen a lot of, I never expected there to be 2 group of 6 teams in the college football playoff. We didn't expect to see a group of 6 team getting a first round bye. Yeah. So all the things that we thought weren't actually going to happen functionally speaking have all happened in the first 2 years we had. The supposedly unlikely has happened twice in 2 years. So that's interesting. I hadn't heard that, but
yeah.
So yeah, kind of back to where I was going with the potential expansion. So give until the 2030s, where when those run out, I kind of fully expect the Pac-12 to end up poaching a couple more teams from the Mountain West. I think UNLV is the most likely they end up poaching, but I think New Mexico will also be on the table, where the way they're headed up in football, you look at their basketball.
Football just announced a conference or a football stadium renovation and some additions that they're doing there.
Yeah.
So they're like being reminded that they can be a significant player if they want to be.
Yeah. And
they've been a doormat for a long time, but a coach has come in and reinvigorated things, and they're being reminded they got spurned. So they're like, oh, crap, we better put up now or shut up. And so there's been a definite sea change happening in Albuquerque.
Yeah, and so I think that UNLV and New Mexico end up as future Pac-12 members. You might see other, I don't know, we'll see. I keep hearing rumors about St. Mary's in the Pac-12. I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe they get added in basketball. You're going to see the Pac-12 expand, but you're going to see them expand in full members. I think UNLV and New Mexico get targeted. Whether or not they accept, whether or not the Mountain West can end up pulling them from there. But I think if UNLV and New Mexico get invites at this point, after a few years and they see the way things sit with how the Pac-12 was going to have that advantage, slight as it may be, it may not be as big as the Pac-12 would like to pretend it's going to be, but there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a clear gap in the growth opportunities for the Pac-12 teams as opposed to the Mountain West. So you're going to see the Mountain West potentially lose UNLV and New Mexico. They're eventually going to elevate UC Davis to a full member. That's a long-term plan for UC Davis, is to come over as a full member instead of just a non-football member.
Yep.
I don't know if Northern Illinois will go on that same path. I think they're going to focus on football only. But if/when they lose UNLV, New Mexico to the Pac-12, and maybe the Pac-12 at the same time brings over a couple of schools from the American, we'll see if they actually pull off that coup. Because that's kind of a stretch goal there, but I think at least they can target UNLV and New Mexico. That's when the Mountain West losing what will at that point probably be their 2 best schools. New Mexico in probably both football and basketball. UNLV at least in football, potentially in basketball as well. Suddenly you lose those 2 schools. Now what are you going to? And that's where they potentially finally turn to the FCS. It's still an expensive endeavor. Because like I said, North Dakota State's not coming alone. But if you take 4 schools, North Dakota, one of the other Dakota schools, Montana State, because I feel like you basically have to take all of them. That's $20 million, which is roughly the equivalent of one of those schools' entire athletics budget.
Yes.
And the Mountain West reached their highest revenue ever at like $90 million, and that's going down. So can they manage that? We'll see, but that might be their last gasp of this is what we've got to do to stay relevant as a conference, because if you don't add those schools, you don't add schools out of the FCS, like what are they going to do? Add out of, like, they probably look toward New Mexico State at that point finally. I mean, they're already adding UTEP. Maybe they look toward Tarleton State. That's another one they could look toward, but again, that's another FCS. So they'd be looking at, and of course, I talk about adding UC Davis. That's an FCS program that they're already going to look to elevate eventually. So that's another $5 million. You could be looking at $25 to $30 million worth of adding FCS teams. And that's really hard for the Mountain West to do, but it may end up being their last chance.
So just a point of clarification, the $5 million to move up, that money goes to the conference or it goes to the NCAA?
I think it goes to the NCAA because usually the conferences often help pay that, I think, in some cases. I actually don't know that.
I'll have to look that
That's
up.
something I should probably know if we're having this conversation, but I'm pretty sure it goes to the NCAA.
That's my first inclination as well.
Because if the Mountain West got $5 million for elevating an FCS team, they'd have done it last year.
They would have sent invites all over the place, yeah. But so for the Pac-12, like I don't see North Dakota State, the Montana schools.
Pac-12's not adding FCS schools. That's just not happening.
That's not on their radar. They want somewhat proven commodities, or in exchange for that, media markets, or at least potential. And like I love the Dakotas and I love Montana, beautiful country, but population is sparse.
Yeah.
They don't really deliver any extra eyeballs. So for the Pac-12, if they're going to expand, I think you're right. Try to find ways to pry away some of those select schools out of the Mountain West, or take a harder run at some of those other schools like North Texas, UTSA. Try to have somebody out there by Texas State to give them a little bit more of a central time zone wing, if you will, a zone in the Pac-12. So somebody that's more in that area who can help out with some of the travel that'll be happening in those games, so they're just not out isolated on an island. Because we all know how that goes with somebody's far out on their own. It's tough for everybody else, like Hawaii situation.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't like expansion isn't imminent in the Pac-12. They do need to expand. They can't sit at where they're at. They need more football playing schools, but they've got to get this stuff resolved with the Mountain West to see what their war chest even looks like before they can start making other offers. But is it going to be Memphis? Is it North Texas? Is it UT San Antonio? Somebody else out in that area? Tulane? Yeah, those are schools that the Pac-12, I believe, that's where their attention needs to be.
Yeah, I think, and that may end up being the higher priority than going after UNLV, New Mexico. Mind you, I still think they should try and go after them. That just kind of ends up being I think this is something that can definitely happen. Whereas with the American schools, I think they would like to create this central time zone wing of the conference. You described it, where you have like 4 teams out there, if you can. Texas State, North Texas, Tulane, Memphis. Like you get those 4 schools, create a little branch of the conference that can make things a little bit easier scheduling wise for them. And, heck, in a lot of these other sports, if you need to go on the road, then you play 2 of those schools at once, kind of save on budget for, soccer and baseball and all these other sports. And basketball as well. And so you kind of have a bit of a haven there.
Yeah, because right now you got 1 in the central time zone, 3 in the mountain, and then the rest are in the Pacific.
Everyone else Pacific. And so you kind of even things out a little bit. And heck, if you add New Mexico and UNLV, you add 1 more in the Pacific, 1 more in the mountain, and that again, and if you have 4 in the central time zone, and at that point you have 14 teams or something like that, and make the new Pac-14, I guess. You end up with a solid conference full of teams that kind of span, 3 different time zones. You have 3 different, good time slots, but it's not this extreme coast to coast travel for most teams. And I think that could end up being a really solid ideal where you're good in football, you're good in men's basketball, you're good in women's basketball, you're good in baseball, because that's a sport that the Pac-12 is primed to be pretty solid in. So I think that gives the Pac-12 a really solid footprint in the future. But as we keep saying, these are long-term goals, or at least I could say midterm goals, where imminent, none of it is imminent. But it's not like 10, 15 years down the line.
Yeah. So that's one of the big things is there could be potential conference expansion and realignment with some FCS schools trying to elevate their profile and their conversation. But the more imminent thing that's needing to be addressed for the Pac-12 is, what do we do as a conference? Like, we're going to play football this year with 8 schools. So how do we schedule that? We're starting to see conferences release their 2026 football schedules. And it's got a lot of people asking, well, what's the Pac-12 going to do? Are you going to play a bunch of non-conference games? You're going to try to find 5 non-conference games? That's kind of tough. So the Pac-12, with their board of governors, if you will, their governing board, they're gathering in California this week. Athletic directors from all upcoming Pac-12 schools, they are all meeting tomorrow. University presidents, they join the discussion and they join the party on Thursday. And on Friday, it's university presidents alone to finalize some of these details. And they have a lot to hash out. Highest priority is, what are we going to do with football this year? But it's also like, how are we going to function as a conference? How are we going to do a conference football championship? How are we going to do a basketball tournament? Where is that going to be held? What do we do with Olympic sports? And then other things like NIL and transfers and portal and other things like revenue sharing. So, and bowl tie-ins. So they have a lot that they're going to be discussing this week. John Wilner with the San Jose Mercury News did a great job lining this all out, what their agenda looks like. And so there's a couple different proposals that are being kicked around for football scheduling. And with the automatic bid going to the highest ranked team out of the G6, the Pac-12 is now looking like, how do we maximize our top teams to put them in a position to always be that representative? So how do you do that with your scheduling? You have 7-game conference schedule. So you're going to go at 5 non-conference games. You better make sure those are good non-conference games to elevate your profile. But that can be hard and logistically a challenge when you have these power conferences that they're just scheduling each other. They're not playing group of 6 teams anymore. So it's really hard to get good money games, good buy games, but also games that elevate your profile. So a couple other options. You can do an 8-game conference schedule, and you have 1 home-and-home series that's in there. You pick a team in your conference that you will play twice. And so that would rotate from year to year who that is that you face. Another option is what they're calling a combination of the two. Features a home-and-home series for each team, but only 7 conference games. So that other home-and-home, one of those home-and-home games, it wouldn't count as a conference game. And then there's another one that's been floated, and I don't know that it's very legitimate, but that late in the season, it's a flex week. And so they wait to see who is developing as the better teams. And then let's position them to face each other later on in the season to guarantee good versus good, and to put them in a better position to win, to highlight their opportunity to get in as the top representative. So those are some of the models that are being discussed and at least floated out there for the Pac-12 and how they handle the football scheduling. Yeah, and this is something actually we got on our text line before the show, 8771, posting it. It was a tweet from, I think, the Reddit College Football, who was pulling it from a fan who actually made a nice little graphic where, kind of building on the idea of a flex, I think there was this basically Pac-12 playoff, where the final week basically becomes a 4-team playoff. And the other 4 teams that aren't involved can, they'd play each other for, bowl eligibility or whatnot, stuff like that. Where the win, you put 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3 in the standings together. Those teams play to get into the playoff. Just that it's a take on the flex idea. It's just
But
the winners of that flex week, then they face each other for the conference championship.
Yeah, so it basically becomes a mini 4-team playoff.
Semifinal.
Yes, it becomes a semifinal in the conference championship game is the tail end of a 4-team playoff. So
I like that idea, but logistically that's a challenge.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing with the flex is that, teams plan their schedule and travel and a lot of these logistics months out. And like the conference championship game is often...
If you wait, then it becomes much more expensive.
Yeah.
And that's why you plan it. Like, you want the schedules out now so you can start making your reservations, line up your airfare, all that stuff. Because if you're waiting and you don't know and feel like a week before, that's logistically a challenge and expensive.
Yeah, conference championship games can be tough enough. But to be honest, conference championship, that sudden travel for a conference championship only impacts one team. And to be honest, even with that, you can kind of plan ahead and be mapping things out. Whereas with the flex week, it's like we could play almost literally anybody.
Do we have a hotel block that can handle a football team suddenly showing up?
Yeah, and you have to scout it out for maybe as many as 3 or 4 different schools, as opposed to if you're 1 week out from the conference title and say you're the number 2 team. And heck, if you're the number 1 team and you're pretty likely to stay, or if you're not, exactly who's the team that can overtake you, you can say, okay, we're going to tentatively plan to, for Boise State, maybe to go to San Diego State or maybe to go wherever. And if you're UNLV and you're maybe, you're most likely to end up going to Boise State. So you can plan ahead, but for the flex week, it gets even more tricky. Could it be done? Yes.
Yeah.
But would it be enjoyable, and would a lot of people be unhappy about it? Yes, they would. So that's why I think a flex, as nice of an idea as it is, I don't really have any problem with it. I think it's creative, and I think it's something that would kind of be nice. And it also create drama and a bunch of people whining, which is the stuff that hydrates you in the middle of football season, drinking the salty tears of beat writers and fans whining about the conference and the decisions they make. But it might be a little bit too much there. So we'll likely just end up seeing probably a home and home type thing, which I don't like that either, to be honest.
I thought it was weird watching Oregon State and Washington State do that.
It's just I just don't like in football, it's just weird to be playing teams twice outside of rematching in the conference championship game. But even that feels weird a lot of times.
It's conceivable that you could have teams face each other 3 times in one season.
Yeah, and you don't like to see that in football where games are so limited. Like in basketball, see each other twice because you get to play 35 games. Go see each other 2, even 3 times in a season. Once you add the conference tournament in, you'll see, if you go to the championship game in the conference tournament, there will probably be 3 teams that you face 3 times. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That's basketball where volume games are played. But if you play 12 games in a season, 13 or 14 with conference titles and bowl games, I don't want to see the same team twice.
No, you want to see you're facing variety, see what you can do to schedule different teams from different areas, see what you match up against different types of programs and different conferences. That's what I think would be ideal. But when you have a limited number and you can't, the ACC is not scheduling games. The Big 12 is not scheduling games with G6 schools. The Big Ten's not scheduling games with G6 schools.
Basically,
what do? You have to just get a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West or Conference USA or the Sun Belt, and it's just G6 versus G6, which you're going to have some of that anyway. But are you going to see a lot of that? Do you want more of that? And that's kind of the road we're going down.
I think it would be nice for the Pac-12 and Mountain West to eventually get over there, grab with each other, and schedule each other a lot for these non-conference. Because you don't like seeing the Pac-12 and even the Mountain West, scheduling a bunch of games across the country with the MAC. And nothing against the MAC, it's entirely travel-based.
Yeah.
I have no problems with Mountain West and Pac-12 teams playing teams in the MAC as far as a football sense. It's the travel, because if the MAC has to come out here to the West Coast, it doesn't work for them either. The football might be good, but the logistics aren't as fun. Utah State going out to play, Temple and UConn. Why are you going that far to play non-conference games? You should be able to get them out here in the West. And so that's what you like to see. And it'll be difficult to schedule power conference teams because for most power conference teams, they're going to get whittled down to playing one game against a group of 6 because they play 9 conference games against their own conference. Then they play an FCS team. They don't have to, but they're pretty much all going to play an FCS team, all except for a small handful. I think there were like 6 power conference teams last year that didn't play an FCS team. And I think 1 or 2 of them are teams that just, by principle, don't play FCS. I think Stanford and Notre Dame, typically don't play FCS teams. I think, don't quote me on that. But I think there were a couple that generally just on principle don't play FCS. So 9 games against conference, 1 game against the FCS. Pretty much all these conferences are by rule or by kind of
expectation.
Expectation. That's the word I was looking for. Where maybe it isn't a rule, but it's an expectation. Playing another power conference team and Notre Dame. So that adds up to 11 games that they are basically predetermined into. Power conference, FCS, 9 conference. That's 1 game for all power conference against the G6. And the math actually maths out for basically every power conference team. They could theoretically split that just about evenly, because I think there's almost an even number of power conference to G6 teams. Weirdly enough, it's almost like they're both in the mid 60s, right around 65 or thereabouts. Then there's some independents in there, and also Notre Dame's in there. But so everyone, there's not going to be this crisis of teams not getting to play, power conference teams. And I mean, Notre Dame, they don't have any conference games. They do basically play an ACC slate.
Yeah, they have a scheduling agreement with the ACC.
But they can still get 4 or 5 games against the G5. So there's not a crisis of not being able to play power conference teams, but the days of Utah State playing 2 power conference teams in a season are quickly coming to an end. They're going to do it next year. But not only does Bronco not want to do it, they may not get to do it even if they want to. The availability
and option is just not going to be there.
Yeah, it's going to dry up there. So it'll be tough for non-conference scheduling to happen. So that adds another reason why the Pac-12, at least until they can expand, will likely be going with this. You play some team in the conference twice.
Yeah, and then the question is, does that second game count as a conference game or not?
Yeah.
Which we've seen that. Some of the power conferences have done that too. It's impossible for them. They're so big.
Yeah.
You can't play everybody.
Well, I think a lot of them
schedule them when they're like non-conference, even though they're in the same conference.
And I think a lot of them were doing that because there was some conference realignment and there were already games scheduled with the teams as they were moving over and suddenly became conference mates. So some of that happened where there were non-conference games played between ACC teams. Or Big Ten teams. Even the Mountain West had that kind of to a degree, I think. Or no, it was when they had the Oregon State, Washington State. There were some of those. But although I don't think any of those in the scheduling agreement counted as conference games anyway.
I would suspect that by the end of this week, we will know the direction the Pac-12 is going in regards to scheduling. The other question is about conference title games. We've kind of talked about it, but do they do what we've seen in the Mountain West and some other conferences have done, where the top team hosts, or do they go to a neutral site, which some of the power conferences like to do? And that way, with the flex scheduling, it's not a question of all of a sudden trying to figure out logistics again. It's like, we know it's going to be here on this date, and we're going to have blocks of hotels already reserved for whomever those teams are. Do they host? The top team hosts, or do they do it at some neutral site? Are there enough traveling fans that make sense for it to be at a designated neutral site every year? And then the same thing with basketball. What do they do with their basketball tournament? Does it go back to Las Vegas? What do they do? Look at their scheduling format too, because they'll have more basketball playing schools. So actually, basketball scheduling is not a problem. I think that's a benefit. But there's a lot of things that they're trying to work through this week.
Yeah, a lot of different things that they need to do. So we'll keep it updated. We'll provide updates as much as we can when we get the news reported by others or what details we learn ourselves. So we'll keep that updated here on the Fan and likely on Cache Valley Daily as well. Final topic. We spent a lot of time talking about conference realignment and stuff. So we'll go relatively quick here through the final little bit here. I do need to, and I promised I would mention this on today's show. Maybe I should have gotten to it in the live portion, but it was Dallin Wilson tweet out one stat, so I had to make sure that I went over it. And that is, I don't know if you saw this, Eric.
I don't think I did.
So yeah, Dallin Wilson on Twitter. So he outlines this where he says, Utah State has an interesting win-loss streak pattern this season. They won 7, lost 1, won 8, lost 2. And so if it continues, it means they will win 9. So they would be 1 through the next 9, but then they would lose 3. And that would mean losing at San Diego State, home against Grand Canyon, and at UNLV. That sounds like it would be disappointing, but then if that pattern continues, they would win 10 games in a row. The final regular season game against New Mexico, 3 games in the Mountain West Conference tournament, and then 6 straight games to claim the NCAA National Championship.
I like this pattern.
Yeah. So, and if that pattern holds true, Utah State would go 34-6, and as I mentioned, win the national championship. So there we go. Pattern recognition from, and I need to point out Dallin Wilson's credentials as a, where he says he has a master, I think so. It was someone else pointing this out, saying he has a master's of data analytics. This is not just some random person. This is someone who knows statistical patterns and can analyze them. They've got the degree, the I am smart paper hanging on the wall.
Yes.
So just had to bring that up on today's show, even if it wasn't during the live portion.
Trends. I like to see the trends.
As someone who is a numbers guy, coming from me, I have to appreciate that. Even though I don't also have the I am smart paper hanging on the wall, at least in stats. I've got an associate's degree hanging on the wall, but I don't know if that's worth much.
That's funny.
But Mountain West basketball being played tonight. Of course, if you're listening to the podcast, these games may or may not have already happened. Though late games tonight, all of them starting 8 p.m. or later. Boise State at San Jose, Grand Canyon at Nevada, and New Mexico at UNLV. Really looking at those last two is interesting. Lawler, the terrifying Lawler, especially if they've got a band, then Grand Canyon might as well give up now.
Look out.
Grand Canyon's looking really good as of late, but if Lawler's got its band, I'm sorry, it's over.
The tubas are there.
Yeah,
say goodnight, Irene.
It's done. But then, New Mexico at UNLV, where the Rebels, obviously beating Utah State, gave them some momentum. Petered out a little bit, losing at home to San Diego State, who were able to take care of business. But still a dangerous UNLV team. And New Mexico, kind of interesting in that they're still a good defensive team. They can be a little hot and cold shooting-wise. But if they're hitting their threes, then they're basically unstoppable, as they kind of were in their last game, where since they were playing against Nevada, they kept hitting their threes, and Nevada had no answer for it.
Nevada favored by 3.5.
Yep,
over Grand Canyon. New Mexico as the road team favored by 4.5.
Yeah, 4.5-point road favorites. So, and I'd probably lean toward the favored teams, at least, at the very least winning, but I'm not so sure Nevada covers against Grand Canyon. Not that I'm giving betting advice here, because again, if you take my sports opinions and betting advice as betting advice, you deserve what happens to you.
Yes.
New Mexico, though, I think they can take care of business at UNLV, but it depends on which UNLV team that shows up. It's the team that showed up against Utah State. UNLV is got some players, but they can just go cold. If their isolation ball doesn't work, they're done.
Yeah.
And New Mexico will rip them to pieces if UNLV isn't on point defensively. So those will be some interesting games, some games worth watching tonight.
The Grand Canyon, Nevada game, that's 8:30 on FS1. New Mexico at UNLV, 9 o'clock on CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, so be switching between those two once both start running concurrently, but Grand Canyon, Nevada getting a bit of a head start. Maybe we'll pass over Boise, San Jose, though, as Leon Rice pointed out, San Jose has a weird habit of often beating teams they shouldn't. Last year, San Jose beat New Mexico, if you remember.
That's right.
Mountain West champion New Mexico. The year before that, I actually went and checked this trend. The year before that, though, they didn't. And the year before that, San Jose was actually good. So it made sense when they beat some teams. But San Jose has usually someone at the bottom of the conference. A lot of times it's either UNLV or San Jose is beating somebody that they theoretically don't have any business beating. And Boise State has already taken way too many losses to be affording a loss at San Jose.
They've won 4 in a row. The Broncos have
3 in a row, I think.
3 in a row,
because they started like 1-5. They beat New Mexico early on, and then they lost those 4 straight to basically everybody. But yeah, now they're at 3 in a row where they've got I forget exactly who they've beaten in the streak, but
Colorado State, Wyoming, and Air Force.
There you go. So they're going through the weaker part of the conference now, which they went through the strongest part of the conference, went 1-5. Now they're starting to clean up, going against the weaker part of the conference, getting a bit of relief there. I think that's just about it for us.
Yeah, tomorrow certainly we'll definitely lean in more on Wyoming basketball. Hear what coach and players have to say. You kind of alluded to this, but some big things coming for Utah State athletics and fundraising. We'll be able to share more details on that tomorrow night. So stay tuned. A lot more detail coming down the pipe for previews. We'll have reactions to what happened in these conference games tonight. And see where things go with Utah State and Wyoming in the Mountain West.
All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us here on our Full Court Press podcast feed. That's where this section will be playing. Make sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to keep having these truncated shows, but we're going to continue talking about this. I mean, we added another 40 minutes of content onto our 27 minutes, so we've given more than an hour's worth of content on a variety of subjects, and we'll continue doing that whether or not we're able to carve out a section on our normal live 2-hour block. But thanks again for listening. Again, I've been Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on the Full Court Press.